We now want to bring in the voice of the New York Mets, SNY's own Gary Cohen. And Gary, I'm going to start right where we left off with Jim Duquette, because no one knows the history of this franchise better than you. How do you put in perspective the New York Mets signing a free agent away from the New York Yankees, putting a future Hall of Famer coming to Queens?
Well, it is certainly the biggest and most important transaction the Mets have ever made. I mean, the only one that even is in the same ballpark was the trade for Mike Piazza in 1998. The Mets have never dipped this deeply into the free agent market in terms of, the caliber of player and youth. The thing that would come closest to that would have been signing Carlos Beltran, but Beltran wasn't 26 years old when the Mets signed him. Juan Soto just turned 26. He is arguably the best hitter in baseball. If not, he's in the top three. And did I mention he's just turning 26? He's got 7 years under his belt. He is a marvelous, marvelous offensive player and completely changes the conversation around the Mets. Coming off a National League Championship Series appearance, they are automatically the favorites in the National League East, regardless of what they do the rest of the offseason.
You led me to my next question, because obviously you know the numbers as well as anyone, but the 36.4 career WAR, he's one of only 9 players to hit at least 200 home runs through age 25. And I guess you already just said it, but how would you describe the impact now on the field this signing will have for this team?
Well, it obviously creates an enormous length in the lineup. I mean, Juan Soto is a force of nature. He's a 400 on-base percentage guy. He's a 500-plus slugging guy. He presents a threat every time he comes to the plate. And, obviously depending on whether the Mets get Pete Alonso back, but if you're looking at a middle of the batting order that features at least Juan Soto, Francisco Lindor, and Mark Vientos, that's a formidable grouping in, say, the 2, 3, and 4 spots in the batting order. So it's a monumental day for the Mets. The fact that they took the player from the Yankees and they ended up outbidding the Yankees in the end, to me, that's an important footnote, but it's not the story. The story is that the Mets got perhaps the best hitter in baseball for at least the next 5 and perhaps the next 15 years if he plays out the entire contract. That in and of itself is an enormous piece. And going back to when Steve Cohen bought the team, this is what you envision. People all through the offseason so far, every day have asked me about Juan Soto. And the thing that I always say to them is, well, our guy has the most money. Well, it turns out that the guy with the most money got the biggest prize. And that's the payoff of having Steve Cohen as your owner, his willingness to do whatever it takes to get the Mets a World Series championship. And this is an enormous step in that direction.
The guy with the biggest money gets the biggest prize. It usually does work that way. And Gary, you're around this team every day, and even into the outside world and the fan, you could see the chemistry was a huge part to last year's successful season. So you know what that clubhouse is like and how important that chemistry was. You know Juan Soto from covering him when he was with the Nationals and the Padres. How does he blend in, you think, with the chemistry of this club?
Well, first of all, the Mets chemistry in 2024 was unparalleled. I mean, I've been around this team every day for 37 years, and there's no clubhouse that I've been around that compares to the one the Mets had this year. So that having been said, it's going to be different in 2025. And the Mets have had a ton of free agents. They've already lost an important one in Luis Severino, and it's going to be different. But last year, Francisco Lindor and, to a lesser extent, Brandon Nimmo took over that clubhouse. They are now the acknowledged leaders on this team. And I think that Juan Soto, knowing him and how badly he wants to win, understands just how important Francisco Lindor is. And I think that's going to be a fantastic partnership going forward.
A few moments ago, you mentioned Pete Alonso, obviously uncertainty about his Met future. How do you think the signing of Juan Soto impacts Pete Alonso's free agency?
I don't think it affects it all that much. And the Mets have made it quite clear that even if they sign Soto, they still are going to be front and center for Pete Alonso. And honestly, I don't know how robust the market is going to be for Pete. So I think there is every chance that Pete comes back to the Mets. And that would be obviously an incredible piece to put behind the guys we just mentioned in the Mets batting order. It would be it would really create a tremendous length in that lineup that the Mets have sometimes lacked. They had it for times last year, but not as consistently as they would in that kind of lineup.
I know I'm making this very simplistic, and it doesn't work this way, and you don't get to be a general manager of a Major League Baseball club without being able to multitask. But if you were David Stearns, what's next on your priority list? Is it Minaya or is it Alonso, or what do you think it is?
Yes.
yes, and yes, right? Go all in?
Yeah, I mean, I'm assuming that Sean Minaya is their number one pitching target. I don't know that to be a fact. Andy can certainly speak better to that in terms of the machinations of the market. But clearly the Mets, even with the signings of Montas and Holmes, still need at least one, if not two, frontline starting pitchers to solidify their rotation. And they need to resolve the Alonso situation one way or another. If not Alonso, do they go after Christian Walker? Do they move Vientos to first? Do they go after a third baseman? Do they trust in Mauricio or Beatty to be that guy going forward? Those are all the questions that they have to ask. And, it's still awfully early in the off season, but with the biggest domino having fallen, I think you're probably going to see a lot of signings in the coming days.
When we started our coverage of this breaking news, Andy Martino pointed out that just about 24 hours ago, the Mets were still a punchline on Saturday Night Live regarding this. You grew up a Met fan. You know the psyche of a Met fan. What does this news do for that Met fan that's, lives and dies with this team?
Well, I mean, the Mets fans got a taste of success this year. The last 4 months of the season, they were the best team in baseball. They got into the National League Championship Series despite a very thin pitching staff. Met fans have every reason to feel good about themselves before the Soto signing, but this ratchets everything up into hyperdrive, and I'm sure Met fans will be awfully encouraged. Looking forward to 2025.
Yeah, $765 million certainly is hyperdrive. Gary Cohen, the voice of the Mets, thank you very much for joining us with our coverage here of Juan Soto to the Mets. Appreciate your time, Gary.
Thanks, Eamon.